Hello everyone, welcome back for the final video of the chapter, The Three Orders. Today's class I'll begin with the topic, the crisis of the 14th century. So for this topic, you can take the first sentence of the paragraph as the question. By the early 14th century, Europe's economic expansion slowed down. Explain. So let's see, what is this paragraph all about. So as we go through the paragraph, we will study or we will try to find out the exact reasons or the factors which slowed down the progress or economic expansion of Europe by the early 14th century. So the first point or the first thing that really affected, or the first factor that really affected the economy of Europe was the change in climatic conditions. Right? So now by the end of the 13th century, the warm summers of the previous 300 years of Northern Europe was replaced by bitterly cold summers. Seasons for growing crops were reduced by at least a month. On higher altitude, it was more impossible to grow crops because it was bitterly cold out there. Many agricultural farms were destroyed by storms and oceanic flood. As a result, government's income in taxes or in any other way was reduced. So that was the first factor, that is changes in climatic condition. Second factor is intensive plowing. So the favorable climate before the 13th century had converted many forests and pastures into agricultural land. Now when you talk about the period before 14th century, that was a period when it was best suited for cultivation. So during this period, the people of Europe, they had cut down the forest, they had cleared up the forest in order to turn this forest into agricultural land, and because of that many forests were lost, and the soil what they used was exhausted. When it's exhausted, it means because they kept on growing, they kept on plowing it, they kept on growing crops out there, and that made the soil exhaust. Under same thing, under intensive plowing, they practiced 3 field rotation of crops. That was another factor that made the land exhaust. It happened because lack of proper soil conservation. They had no idea like how to conserve the soil and all. Then number of cattle was also reduced due to short of pastures. There was no grasses, no grassland or area for grazing. And when the area for grazing was less, they were not looking after cattle. The number of cattle came down. So this is the second factor. The third factor, shortage of metal money. So now when you talk about shortage of metal money, now this was a time when output from the silver mines in Austria and Serbia, suddenly there was very less amount of silver coming out. So it resulted, because the number of silver or the amount of silver that they need for minting metal money was becoming less. Consequently, trade was hit because they could not make metal money. The shortage of silver forced the government to reduce the silver content of the currency, and the government started to mix cheap metals in the silver to make coins. So that can be one of the factors that really slowed down the economic expansion of Europe. The last factor can be taken as the plague infection, the bubonic plague infection. Now trade expanded in the 13th and 14th centuries. Ships carrying goods from far off countries started arriving in Europe or European parts. Now because of that, rats came along with the ships. These rats were carrying deadly bubonic plague. As a result, Western Europe was greatly affected by this infection between 1347 and 1350. Then the epidemic killed about 20% of the people of the whole of Europe. And cities were the hardest hit. Right, now the plague, because these cities were the trade centers, and these trade centers have got more and more businessmen coming in and out. So because of this, more rats spread in these trade centers, and because of that, the cities were hardest hit. The plague infected not only the businessman, but it infected the infants, the young ones, the elderly, and many other minor people. Then other episodes of the plague also took place in 1360s and 1370s. As a result, the population of Europe reduced to 45 million in 1400 CE from 73 million in 1300 CE. You can see there was a drastic fall in the population. So you can see that the amount of population or people who lost their life because of this bubonic plague. So these are the factors. So the last paragraph of this topic has got the consequences. First consequence was that the epidemic combined the economic crisis and caused great social dislocation. Many people started leaving their places because they were frightened that if we live here we may die. So they start moving away from this part of Europe. Major shortage of labor occurred with depopulation. As people died, as people left these places, there were shortage of labor. People could hardly find someone who could work under their factories or under to do some kind of hard labor. There were no people. Now serious imbalance were created between agriculture and manufacturing. As there was no people or laborers to work, they were very much the agriculture, whatever they produce, or the manufacturing industries, whatever they need, could not reach in time. The agricultural area could not send their products to the manufacturing companies or manufacturing areas, and the manufacturing areas or the people of this area could not come to village to collect these things, because labor was needed, driver was needed, the lorries needed, trucks needed. And because of this bubonic plague, many people start leaving this place. So they were a little bit frightened also to move from one place to another. Then there were very few buyers available, due to which price of agricultural goods dropped. And the last thing is that about wages. The wage rate increased because rise in demand for labor. So as there were no laborers, as there were hardly any laborers found, if there is a labor if there is a person who is ready to do the hard labor, so now he has got choices, because many people need a person who should work or who could work under him. Suppose if there is only one labor and the demand for this labor is from 30 to 40. So one man, he will say, I'll pay you 10 rupees. Other will say, I'll pay 20, 30, 40, 50. In that way it rise up. So the labor will wait for the person who can give him high rate for his service. So he will be just waiting there and looking eagerly, like who will give me the more wage, and with him only he will try to join or venture or go around to work. And that was the consequence of economic slowdown. Our next topic is social unrest. So take down a question for this. How did economic crisis of the 14th century cause social unrest among the peasants and the lords? So when you read the question, you could see that this part is related with your 14th century economic crisis of Europe. So what was the cause of social unrest? That is what we are going to study, and how it is related to economic crisis of the 14th century. Now when we talk about economic crisis of 14th century, we came to know that suddenly, because of the economic crisis, the prices of agricultural goods went down, then or dropped. Then the laborers were hardly found, and if they were found, the wage rate was quite high. People were displaced, or we can say the depopulation was going on. They started leaving their own areas and start to move away from that area so that they can be safe from the bubonic plague. So in this way, these are a few of the examples of the economic crisis. So after that, the most hit was the lord, because the lord, whatever income he gets it from the agriculture and agricultural products. But now agricultural prices came down, and as it came down, his income was totally hit or badly hit. Then above all, he had got labors, and this labor have to be paid, and the amount that he have to pay to the labor was not the same what he used to pay before. It increased, and because it is increased, he was desperate, and the cause of his desperation was the money contract between the peasants and himself, that means the lord. So in order to revive, in order to save the labor services, because the lord need the labor services, the lord cannot do every type of work on his own. He needs someone to help, that means for any purpose. So if he could not give money to the, or give the wage to the laborers, he will not get any type of labor, so he have to keep them. So now in order to keep the laborers, he have to break the contract between the lord and the farmer. Now this contract is an example. I'm just saying this contract might be for 1 year or 2 years. So in this contract, it is written that for a single year or for 2 years, you will work under me. So that particular farmer is being fixed for a time, for a term of work, or for a tenure of 1 year or 2 years. And the farmer also is quite happy, saying that okay, for 2 years I'm fixed in this area and I'll get some kind of income without failure. But when this social unrest or when economic crisis took place, the lord have to break this money contract so that he don't have to pay money to the farmer, right? And whatever money he saves, it could be utilized in paying to the laborers so that they can still continue to work under the lord. But breaking off the contract was not welcomed by the farmers, and so the farmers started to oppose violently. And particularly those farmers who are better educated, they understand the rules and regulation. They know that a person cannot break the contract, so they started opposing the lord vigorously, very violently. Then this type of violence could be seen in Flanders in 1323, then in 1358 in France, and in England in 1381. Though these rebellions were ruthlessly crushed means it was stopped, but now it was good that it occurred. The reason is that there were some areas where some of the lords are very oppressive, and they rule this peasant community very badly. So when this revolt started, those areas where the ruthless lords were there, in that area the farmers started to fight against this oppressive lord. After which the farmers made it sure that wherever the revolt started or wherever the revolt took place, it was good. But the other thing is that when we started the revolt, we forced these lords to give up their oppressiveness. So now we should not allow this old feudal relationship to be reimposed. Therefore, the lord, though they had succeeded in crushing the revolts, the peasant ensured that the feudal privileges of the earlier days could not be reinvented. Means whatever happened in the past, it happened. But after the revolt, the peasants made it sure that no privileges could be given to the lords, the feudal lords, and in case if they want to reinvent it, it should not be allowed. So that was all about the social unrest. Political changes is the last topic of the chapter. So take down a question under this. Give reasons for the emergence of new nation states in Europe. So let us see what is this all about. First of all, we came to know that in 15th and 16th centuries, the kings they had a different strategy. They say that if we have good army or strong army, and if we have a better source of income, we can do whatever we like. So what did they do is they started to strengthen their military, and they started to find out the ways of earning. That means financially they are becoming powerful. And with these two different changes, or two changes, what did they do is they try to capture new areas. And after capturing these new areas, they try to turn them into economical importance area, or economically important area, right? Then this type of rulers, or some of the examples of these rulers of Europe are like Louis XI of France, Maximilian of Austria, Henry VII of England, Isabella and Ferdinand from Spain. And these rulers are totally absolutist rulers, and they started the process of organizing standing armies. When you talk about standing armies, means the armies who are always ready to fight. So they had a good powerful army. So that is what they do, right? And besides that, they say that we should have a permanent bureaucracy. Permanent bureaucracy means a fixed minister should be given, and this minister will look after that field permanently. Means no new person will be employed or engaged in it. A person who is elected for any field, he will keep on looking at it, right? So in that way they went for this permanent bureaucracy. And another system was started so that they can get more money: national taxation. Whoever lives in that country have to pay tax. So in that way they earn lots and lots of money, and because of lots and lots of money, the military can be strengthened. The most important reasons for the triumph of these monarchies was the social changes, and these social changes took place in the 12th and the 13th century. And why these social changes took place? Because the feudal system was stopped, or it was dissolved. Okay, and vassalage means, the renting of the land was also stopped. And then there was a slow rate of economic growth, and because of the slow rate of the economic growth, the king could control the poor or the weak ones as well as the powerful ones. Now the rulers also say that we have to dispense a new type of feudal rules so that many people can be benefited. Now actually many people can be benefited means the armies can be benefited. So what did he do is that he said that we will start new policies, and all these new policies are what? To place the armies in different corners of the area, and these armies will not be empty hand, they will be all armed to defend. And then the resistance of aristocracy, whoever resisted, it was crumbled. Okay, and because of that people start to fear the kings. Then after this you can see that the king increase the tax, and when king increase the tax means he has got lot of income now. Okay, he has enough of revenue to look after large armies, and because he has got large armies, he have the chance to defend and expand his frontier from one area to another area. Then with this, the people, they started to feel that no, if we are quiet, there will be lots of problems. So they started to resist. So the resistance can be seen that all the resistance started in different places. For example, in England, it say that 5 times people resisted. Rebels start, okay, but 5 times they were suppressed. So 1497, 1536, 1547, 1549, 1553. So they were all oppressed, okay, occurred but were put down, as it is said. Means it was just suppressed by the king. Now in France also they had to wage a long struggle against dukes and princes. Now people also have to fight. From 1461 to 83, Louis XI had to fight against dukes and princes. Means many people were there who were fighting, so he had to fight with them. Then lesser nobles, often members of the local assemblies, means those who are not the kings, but little bit lower, or we can say among common men he is little bit superior. Now he has to assemble, or he called some of the people in assemblies, and then he said, let us resist against the royal people. But that was also a failure. So in that way, a new type of idea emerged here, and thus many new areas also started to emerge. So that is all about the emergence of new areas, right? So with this we come to the end of the chapter. Thank you.